If you live in one country for most of your life, well into your 20s, and then move abroad, it's only normal that some of the habits, mindsets, routines, and ways of life from your formative years will move with you. Some aspects of your life will completely change, others will start to change little by little, and some will remain exactly the same. And it's those habits that have stayed the same that have led to some weird looks and questions over the years. So let's talk about them in this video, all about the 6 American things I do that confuse French people. Okay, bonjour. If you're new here, my name is Diane, and I'm the American woman behind the Living Abroad lifestyle blog, We in France. Check that out. Here on this channel, though, we talk about everyday French life and beyond. So if you like this sort of content, I'd love it if you subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up. Okay, and before we get into the 6 things, let me quickly point out this video is sponsored by Piplet, a modern language assessment company based here in France. So thank you to Piplet. Check them out down below in the description box. All right, now right into the video. Number 1 is refrigerating eggs. So as soon as I get home from the grocery store, my eggs go right into the fridge. It's a habit. I've done it my whole life. In the USA, all commercially produced eggs need to be refrigerated to prevent condensation from forming on the shell. This moisture allows bacteria to get into the egg and it can make us sick. In France, that's not the case because the eggs retain a protective coating that prevents this from happening. It's just due to the way that they're processed. Now, French people do sometimes refrigerate their eggs, but it's not out of necessity like it is in the USA. They'll refrigerate them to maybe extend the shelf life, to free up counter space, something like that. It's not the same in France. Okay, number 2, eating fast and multitasking. I admit I eat fast. I always have. I don't know why I rush. I don't have anywhere to be most of the time, but it drives my French husband, Tom, absolutely crazy, and it's a bad habit. For most of my life, mealtime would be kind of an afterthought and an obligatory step in my day before either getting back to work, running out the door, on to the next thing, you know? And eating fast and not focusing on the food is a habit I've seriously gotten better at since moving to France. I've learned little by little to appreciate the meal for what it is, which is a time to slow down, relax, take a break, connect with friends and family, and ultimately enjoy the food. It's not the time to look at your phone, watch TV, talk on the phone, or anything else that doesn't keep you in the moment. Really, in France, mealtime is the main event. It's the focus, and meals are prepared with care, so the focus needs to be on that. Everything else can wait. So, of course, not every French person at every meal is going to be focused on the food. Life gets in the way. We're not all starred chefs. But I have noticed overall that in France, meal times are much more of a big deal, more of a family time, and the focus is on the food much more than it is in the USA. Okay, now a quick word about my sponsor, Piplet. They're a modern language assessment company based here in France, and they do language testing a little differently. Some of the main benefits of the Piplet test is that the test is only 30 minutes long. It's easy to take from the comfort of your home computer and is available in a variety of languages. It tests real-life competencies, so no boring multiple choice. And if you're a French learner, learn more about Piplet via the link below in the description box. Okay, now back to the video. Next one is making small talk. In many regions of the USA, it's perfectly normal and acceptable to make small talk with strangers. So if you're in a waiting room, in a line somewhere, it's polite to talk to the person next to you. I've personally complimented strangers on their shoes, asked people questions, and struck up conversation just because. In France, you'll notice right away that socialization norms are a bit different. And while making small talk with complete strangers isn't rude exactly, it'll certainly be seen as unusual. When I've complimented some ladies I know in passing at the gym, you know, on their workout leggings, they've looked at me kind of like, merci, like in a surprised way, and it clued me in right away that people in France don't do small talk the same way that we do in the USA. And this is because of one very important point. It's because respecting one's personal boundaries and the public versus the private sphere is very important. So if a French person is not super receptive to your small talk, it doesn't mean they're being rude or cold or necessarily that they don't like you. They're just respecting these social boundaries, public versus private. But I personally think if you could give someone an innocent compliment, give them a little boost, make their day better with something authentic, then do it. And I do. Next one, tipping. Tipping culture is very different in France, and it's much less common overall here and in other areas of Europe than it is in the USA. In general, full-time employees are paid a livable wage in France with healthcare and 5 weeks of paid vacation per year, and they don't depend on tips to make ends meet. So I'm talking about the wait staff at restaurants, hairstylists, and other people you'd normally tip in the US. When I first arrived in France, I tipped my hairstylist out of habit, because that's what I did in the US. And I quickly learned it's certainly not the norm to leave 20% for a hair service or at a restaurant, a spa, and other places you generally tip in the US. French people do leave tips, but it's not on the same scale. So of course, if you have a great meal at a French restaurant, you can leave a small tip, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with paying the amount on the bill, and that's it. You're not going to get a dirty look. In many cases, even you go right up to pay at the register, or the card reader terminal is brought to your table, and there's no line on the paper receipt to add a tip because it's just not part of the culture. You'll see on the bill, service compris, the service is already in the amount you see. So feel free to leave a 20-euro bill for a simple lunch that comes out to 18, or the change from your coffee at a cafe. That's fine. It's normal, not obligatory, but you can do it. One other thing to keep in mind, that if you do tip and you start it from the beginning, the first time you see a new hairstylist, it sets a precedent for future visits. He or she will remember that you tipped the first time since it's unusual. So be aware that if you do it once, it'll be expected. And I wouldn't say there's anything offensive about tipping. And of course, you need to do what feels right to you personally, but it would definitely be seen as unusual to leave 20% at a restaurant and a bit out of touch with cultural norms, but you do what feels right for you. Number 5, having wine before the meal, often alone in my own company. In France, this is a little unusual because wine complements the food and is something you have with your meal or during the apéro before you eat. So while some people probably pour a glass of wine to unwind, cook, pregame like I do, the vast majority of French people won't pop a bottle to drink before the main meal is on the table or before the apéro if you have guests over. I admit, I love French wine. I regularly pour a glass of wine before dinner on its own while I'm working on the computer. And it's certainly more common in the USA than in France to have a glass of wine when relaxing, reading alone, winding down. Here, it's a bit less common, I would say. Wine goes with your meal. So yeah, when I pop a bottle before dinner, Tom kind of looks at me like, huh. Number 6, making pumpkin pie or any dessert really with pumpkin. And let it be told that pumpkin pie is my favorite dessert. I love it. Pumpkin spice, cinnamon, that's my thing. And when I've made it here around the holidays to share with my in-laws, the first time they always are a little perplexed, like, they're curious, so that's a good thing. And they do end up loving it. But at first, pumpkin in a dessert, it gets some raised eyebrows. And that comes from the fact that pumpkin is a vegetable dish here, and it's not something you generally mix with spices for dessert. So you'll commonly see pumpkin served like a savory squash dish with dinner, maybe mashed or with a soup. It's not common at all to see pumpkin spice anything as a sugary dessert in the fall or winter months. Something else to point out, you won't find canned pumpkin in the baking aisle here like you do in the USA. It just doesn't exist. For even more things I do that confuse French people, I have a full blog post on this very topic with 17 things I do that confuse French people. So check that out below in the description box to read that full list on the blog. Thank you again to Piplet for sponsoring this video. And if you like this type of content, please let me know in the comments, give the video a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe. Salut!